Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Haley, and I'm the workaholic, wanderlusting woman. I'm pretty, I won't say excited, because I'm kind of actually anxious for today's video. It is the first day of National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and as I've mentioned to you guys before, I've suffered from eating disorders. I want this to be a very transparent, very authentic YouTube channel. I did just start it a couple of months ago. And one of the biggest kind of demons in my life is my relationship with food, my relationship with my body. And I feel like sitting down and telling you guys this story today, one, can hopefully help some of you, but also it can just kind of show you where I'm coming from as a person. I'm a very happy person. I always have been, even through a lot of these different struggles. But as I produce content, or as I do days in my life, or if you want to see my fitness habits or my eating habits, I just felt like it was, very appropriate for me to sit down and explain kind of this one looming demon that I do have. I started having my issues with eating disorders when I was just 14. So I'm now 26, so it has been over 12 years. And I still say that it's going on as we speak because I don't think that you're fully ever recovered from an eating disorder. It was 2 years ago when I was 24, after about 10 years. I got professional help. I went to a counselor. I didn't do inpatient because it wasn't that severe, but I did seek, medical help. And those are the tools that have helped me ever since in identifying what my triggers are and identifying, what kind of causes me to have those negative thoughts about myself. And anything that I kind of tell you about this is coming from that professional input that I got. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to think that one size fits all, because it absolutely does not. My reasonings are different from your reasonings, are different from her reasonings, are different from his reasonings. And this is just my specific experience, my story, and kind of how I've gotten through it up until recently. So like I said, I started having my issues with eating disorders when I was 14, and those issues started with anorexia. I had been called fat by not even a guy I was dating, and I can't even say dating, we were 14. We maybe met up at like the church fair or like at the mall when my friends were there and his friends were there. It was very, very dumb and nothing significant. But he and I broke up after 3 or 4 weeks. It was nothing at all. But his friend, and still to this day, I don't know what the motivations were. I wasn't lingering. I didn't need to speak with any of these people again. But his friend had told me that the reason that he broke up with me was because I was fat. So this isn't the first time I had, gotten bullied or heard that I was chubby. I was attunely aware that I was definitely a little bit thicker. Even then, I never have been really overweight. I'm 5'2", so I, don't have a ton of weight distribution. It all kind of, doesn't have much places to go. But I've always been thicker and stronger. Never what I would constitute as fat, but definitely not one of the more naturally lean people. I have strong thighs. I don't have the bone structure to have a thigh gap. I just naturally carry weight in my hips, which, down the road will be great when I have kids. But at 14, you don't think about any of that. At the time, we didn't really have social media that strongly, but I was looking at magazines or on TV, or even just the other girls in my class that looked, really good in their Hollister jeans with their cute polo, and I just didn't look that way. So I was a little devastated by that comment, and I don't know why. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but for whatever reason, that was the first time that it triggered anything in me. So I skipped a meal. And it was a dinner that I skipped, and earlier in that day, I hadn't had too much. So I remember the next day, as kind of any of us would, if you wake up and you haven't eaten basically in almost, 24 hours since lunchtime the day before, my stomach was pretty flat. because I wasn't bloated, because I, just didn't have that quantity of food in my stomach. The same thing happens to me now. If I have an earlier dinner at 5 and I wake up at 7 the next morning, my stomach is flatter than normal just based on my body type, the way my body metabolizes, and the fact that my stomach isn't expanded. But automatically in my head, that triggered this really did something. So I just started reducing my intake. And at first it was just, I kind of reduced snacks because I was a big snacker. I loved like pizza rolls and ice cream. And then it went to literally eating like an apple and a Diet Pepsi and then a salad that literally was just lettuce and those, I don't know if you remember them, they were like spritzer dressings where they would advertise that it was 1 calorie per spray. So I'd give like 5 sprays to a bowl of lettuce and say that that was dinner. And I lost weight because I was not eating anything. And it just so happened that at the time, a lot of good things were happening in my life. I was starting high school. I was starting to get noticed by boys. And to this day, I do think that I probably would have been noticed even if I hadn't gotten skinnier, because I started experimenting with makeup. I started getting into, different clothing. I was just growing and developing. But I was also, in terms of body type, shrinking. But I correlated all of those good things with the fact that I was getting skinnier. And that's just where my mind led. So I probably for 6 to 8 months went down that path. It was spring into summer. And then I went back to sophomore year of high school. Really, really skinny. I think I was down to like junior sizes, like a size 1 or 3 pants. I was like an extra small in smalls, and that was smaller than I had ever been. That I naturally never even hit those sizes. When I went from kid sizes being like a 14, 16, I went straight into like 7s. Like I never even had hit those sizes. So it was completely new to me. And I felt great. But eventually I did end up kind of feeling the pressure because people were noticing. And of course, like you eat lunch with your friends every day in high school. I was going home to a household with my parents. So there felt to be a lot of outside pressures because people were starting to notice and they were saying something to me. And I mean, I was dramatic, like, of course I'm eating. You just are jealous because I'm getting skinny and all these different arguments. But one thing that just drives me is my relationship with my friends, my family. I'm like that to this day. So the fact that people were upset with me, one thing that never came from my eating disorders was losing people in my life, because starting to lose people was always the thing that kind of like drew me back, because I didn't want to lose people in my life. So those pressures started to hit come fall when I was, back at school, back in the lunchroom, going home. It just didn't seem sustainable to me, but I did want that weight to be sustainable. So I did start eating, and that is when I started to struggle with bulimia. And there was a whole probably year and a half period all through sophomore year into junior year where I threw up probably once or twice a day. I definitely was still getting a caloric intake because I wouldn't be able to go to the bathroom right after certain meals. I was in high school. My parents were around. There was only so many times they would believe me that I wanted to take a bath after dinner. But that lasted for a very long time, and it never, to this day, it never bothered me that I was using a toothbrush and making myself throw up, or that my teeth were yellowing, or that, and at the time I was not sneaky at all, that the toilet was all dirty or that the sink was clogged. I still wanted to be thin, and in my mind, because I couldn't restrict my calories anymore, that was the only answer. So I started having some stomach problems, and kind of going into my senior year is when everything just kind of started subsiding for a while. I had dated a guy that at the time I was completely smitten. I'm like, at the time, he was my first love. Oh my God. He was my prom date. I was so happy. And I mean, it sticks to this day. A lot of the times that I haven't been affected by this have been times where I have a support that's showing me love and showing me, adoration of my body and my mind and really enjoying me for who I am as a person. So when I was dating him senior year, it kind of all subsided. And then I left for college, and there was just all these great things. So everything was okay for a while. So for a couple years in college, Honestly, there was just, positive thing after positive thing. I was in a sorority, then I was president of my sorority. I dated a guy for 4 years. There weren't things in my mind that were reminding me that anything was missing. So I was okay. And again, I just want to kind of disclaim to all of you, this is just me personally, and this is what has affected me. So having things going on in my life that make me feel completed and valued really helped to keep me on the straight and narrow. So the worst my eating disorder ever got was as I was approaching graduating from college. I'd been dating the same guy, and to this day, and I don't know, it's likely he might watch some of my videos, I'm not sure. He was an amazing person. It just turns out in the grand scheme of life that he wasn't my person. And that's hard because I never had any ill wishes towards him. I always, of course, loved him. I just realized that he wasn't the person that I was meant to be with. So leaving college and through my first year of grad school, we had moved in together. I was starting grad school, and it started to feel like something was missing. And I couldn't pinpoint what I thought was missing, because in my mind and in my conscious brain, I did have what I wanted. I had gotten accepted into the grad school I'd wanted. I had gotten a scholarship. I was working full-time that was paying for school. I still had this boyfriend that I had had for a long time, and we were living together and talking about getting married, yet it just still felt like something was missing. So whatever at the time subconsciously I was feeling started to take a hold of me. And that is when, and this is about 2015, the summer of 2015, I was 23, it really took over again. And this time it was just a terrible whirlwind of everything. So I wasn't eating. I strictly remember as I started going down the slope again, at one point I hadn't eaten all morning. It was 3 o'clock and I did have class at night. So I went to Chipotle. I looked up the calories and stuff, and I made myself a salad bowl that only had 600 calories. And I ate all of it. And I was like, you know what though? If that's all I ate all day, 600 calories, that's great. But then slowly it would get less and less and less. I would, turn down, even if I was just in a little meeting or something and they had a bowl of almonds, I wouldn't even have one almond. I started kind of restricting to the point where I got pride out of not eating. So if people notice oh, aren't you going to grab something? Or, oh, did you get lunch? I almost had pride in saying that I didn't. And it turns out that just all kind of came down to, at that point, the fact that I felt like the plan I'd set for my life wasn't going to be the plan that I'd hoped for. Or the plan that I'd set for myself or had envisioned shouldn't be the plan for my life, basically. I had kind of determined that although the guy that I was dating was a fantastic guy, he just wasn't for me. In college, we had the same goal. We wanted to graduate. We wanted to get jobs. It was fun. He played lacrosse. I was in a sorority. It was great. But sometimes when you get out into the real world, people are different. And when you have different intentions and different new milestones you want to reach, sometimes after such a big transition from college to the real world, those just don't add up. And that's okay. And it's something I wish I had known back then, because at the time I felt devastated for what I was doing to him. I know he felt devastated. It was taking a huge toll on my mental health, and it put me down a really, really dark path, because even when I did finally pull the trigger and I broke up with him, there was then this huge piece of me that was missing. Because when you're with somebody for 4 years, they're the person you tell everything to, and suddenly that's gone, even if it's it's your decision. I felt like a piece of me was then missing that I needed to fill. So in my mind, filling it, or I want to describe this properly. In my mind, in wanting to fill something, you can't control that. You can't control, oh, I'm just going to go get a new boyfriend that has all the same goals as me and we're going to end up happily ever after and married and blah, blah, blah. You just don't have control over that. So I continued to start controlling my intake, and it led me down the road to about 105 pounds, which if you see me in my other videos or on my Instagram, I'm not really going to stand up now. I'm 5'2", and if I were to just eat a standard 1,500 calorie day, work out 3 times a week, and be pretty normal, I average in about 135. I'm still petite. I don't really have, too much jiggle. I'm just a sturdy girl. So 105 was very shocking. There's pictures of me, and I think maybe I'll try to add it here, where my legs are bowing out. They're so skinny, and my arms are just withering away. My face is it's just like, there's nothing to me. And in my mind at that time, I was just trying to get control of something, and that's what I got control of. So at this point is where the story should have gotten better, but it didn't, because I then, in the winter of 2016, and I will still hands down say that if any year was the worst year of my life but taught me the most, it was 2016. I started dating a guy that, one, temporarily destroyed one of my friendships, so that was awful, and that was another component of me feeling like I'm missing something. And 2, he just treated me awful. I would now designate that he was emotionally abusive, because although we were dating and although when we were together it was great, I would barely ever hear from him. He could have been living a separate life, and I had no idea. And then when I would question the fact that I never heard from him, that I never, I saw him maybe once or twice a week, and we ended up dating for almost a year. So at least towards the later 6 months of that, I would expect to see someone you're dating for about a year, especially he was in his late 20s and I was in my mid 20s. I don't think it was unreasonable for me to wonder about that, for me to be hurt when he took off work to do a flag football but didn't take off work to come to my graduate school graduation. It was always just this constant self-doubt that I was the one that was wrong, that I wasn't good enough for him. I kind of identified, again, we're getting to the part where I went for some therapy, but I kind of identified that he had this image of what I was in his head. Because, I will say it, I think that I'm pretty. I'm a blonde. At the time, I had a very skinny bod. I got accepted to a government job. So on paper, I looked good. He was 27. He probably was writing home to his family that he met this new girl and all these things about me. But in real life, we just weren't compatible. I never felt comfortable showing my whole personality to him, because I just always felt that he had this cookie cutter image of what I was, and that's just not who I am. I love who I am. I love my personality. I do value beauty and clothes. I love all of that stuff. But I just wasn't that cookie cutter mold that he was looking for. So instead of the point where finding a companion would have made me feel better, and again, I'm not saying that I only feel better due to having a man in my life, because I fully love who I am, being individual, being on my own, but when I felt like my whole picture was completed, and having a man is part of that completed picture. I come from a strong family. I want to get married. I want to have kids. So it was just another piece of that puzzle that I just felt kind of completed with. But that piece that I thought would have made me feel better at the time, it did not. And it made me worse. And it made me go into a year-long, I'd been battling it for a year, and this was another year straight. So I was just emaciated. I was tired. I couldn't work out. I couldn't concentrate. I had no motivation to get out of bed to go to work. I think part of that was due to some anxiety, maybe mild depression, but also to the fact that I had nothing in me that was energizing me to go through the day. And honestly, the best thing that ever happened to me, and I hate to say it, was the day he dumped me. The day he called me after we dated for almost a year. 3 weeks prior, he had taken me to meet his family and told me he loved me. And then he called me on the phone and dumped me. You would have thought I would have been devastated. And for maybe a week, I definitely was a little bit upset that I didn't have answers because there was really no dialogue. It was just like, I don't see a future or this. It was nothing really like substantive. Sorry, the camera cut out. I don't know exactly where it was. But yeah, the conversation wasn't very substantive and there just wasn't much to it. So for about a week or so, I was not so much sad. And I really didn't miss him because I didn't have much to miss because I probably wouldn't have heard from him in that time frame anyway. But more just kind of like mad and I didn't have answers. But it turns out that the turnaround point for me was in those few weeks later when I had this outpouring of love and support from my friends and from my family. Kind of this sigh of relief that I didn't have anyone that was fitting me into a mold anytime. I finally found that missing puzzle piece in myself, which I never had found before. I never had been okay with just being me without a person or just being me, to go out and do my own thing. I was living in a studio apartment in Washington, D.C. I was brand new to my job, and for whatever reason, I had clarity all of a sudden where I was my missing puzzle piece. And that was extreme. That was something I had never experienced in my life. So that was the point, especially the exhaustion, both physically, mentally, and the realization that I was okay and that I could be okay. And I started a new job with benefits, and so I started seeking therapy, and I went to therapy for 6 to 8 months weekly, where I would talk to the same person. I would diary the different times that I felt triggered, the different, I would talk about the times when I didn't really want to eat my meal and what I was feeling. And most of the time we realized that what I was feeling when I didn't want to have that meal wasn't that the meal was going to make me fat. It was, I don't really want to have this meal because I had a bad meeting this morning, or because a trip that I might go on for work is up in the air and we're unsure of it, or I don't know when the next time I'm going to go home to visit my family was. It was all of these other variables kind of in my Haley universe that would trigger this. And we started to talk about my whole 12-year experience, which is why I can sit here and tell you that anytime I've been triggered, it's because I felt like a puzzle piece was missing. And that's been different things. Sometimes it's been a relationship, a companionship. Sometimes it's just been change in my environment, going from grad school to the real world, or going from college to the real world, or going from my hometown to college. It was just always, anytime I felt this missing puzzle piece or the slightest bit of unhappiness, because again, I have a very natural, happy demeanor, is when it was triggered. So I would like to say that was 2 years ago in 2016, or going into 2017, that I got help. Since then, I have had an average of 1,000 to 1,500 calories every day, some days more. I have found love in my body. I found that mainly through group fitness classes, because I find the pace and the tempo and the encouragement and the time frame really doable for me. So instead of punishing my body for the way it looks, I've been celebrating my body for what it can do. I have found a puzzle piece I never knew existed in my fiance Devin, because he's just everything. I feel so blessed that the universe has collided to bring us back into each other's lives. I have not thrown up. I have not taken a laxative in 2 years now. So that is just my story. I have really no conclusions to share with you. I do think I might do a video, and comment down below if you're interested, just about kind of what I do to remain body positive, like tips about when I'm looking in the mirror, or my fitness goals and things like that, because I'd rather kind of celebrate the ways I love myself instead of like completely dwelling on the times I've hated myself. So let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. I would love to do that video because it will also kind of force me to soul search a little bit as to what those things really are. But either way, that is just my story. It's such an important week because 30 million people across the country are suffering from eating disorders as we speak. 1 out of 62 people will pass away from this disease today. And I am just one of those people that can say, it gets better, and I understand that this is a mental illness and it can take over sometimes, but there are resources out there. There are people that love you that can help. I will link below the NEDA hotline if you or anyone you know is suffering. I do have a friend. Unfortunately, her story is very severe. She had to have inpatient therapy, but she kind of took those lemons, turned them into lemonade, and she is now the founder of a nonprofit called The Garment Project that sends sizeless clothing. They're all new. They're donated from big brands, but they send sizeless clothing to those that are recovering because sizes can be a big trigger for somebody. If you come out of recovery and you're wearing a couple size larger, it can be very triggering. So I'll leave all those resources down below. If you'd like to talk with me about this or just, say thanks that someone out there is going through what you are, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. I actually Instagrammed something about it just today before I started filming, and I've had really sweet messages, and that's just why I want to put this out there, to really just show people that you're not alone, and there's hope out there, and it's different for everybody, but there are first steps you can take in making it better. So thank you guys so much for listening. I think I rambled on for about 20 minutes, but thank you for sticking in there. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you just want to join a community full of body positivity and love. It's all lifestyle content, but this is just a big portion of my life and who I am as a person, so I'm glad I was able to share with you guys. All right, I'll see you guys next time.
Representing all the women, salute, salute.